There exists a list of horror movies that live in my head rent-free, that left a pretty damn tough impression on my fragile little mind as a kid. The fact of the matter is, horror films were easily accessible to me for one reason and one reason only: my grandma's VHS collection. And when I say collection, I mean a fucking library of movies, alright, of all genres, and one of which being horror, of course. Now, I know what you're thinking. Your grandma had a collection of horror movies. A sweet old lady had a library of fucking crazy shit. And the answer is, yeah. Believe it or not, I was introduced to all types of shit at a young age, like Trolls 2, Puppet Master, the Nightmare on Elm Street films, etc. Some movies are just burned into my brain, and one being today's video. Well, sort of. Stephen King's Pet Sematary is a grim story about a father losing his child, and in an attempt to return his son back to the land of the living, buries him on a sacred native ground, known to resurrect the dead. Now, I'm sure many of you have seen the film, and there is really no need for me to explain what follows after, but how many of you have actually seen its sequel? I ask because I never even hear it being mentioned when it comes to underrated horror films, which I believe it is. Well, good thing this film fucked me up as a kid, because now it is time to look at Pet Sematary 2.
If you knew it was me, would you have listened?
Just like its predecessor, Pet Sematary 2 takes place in the small town of Ludlow, Maine. A boy named Jeff and his father move into town because of a freak accident involving his mom on the set of a horror film, ironically. The town is full of weirdos. I mean, fucking bullies, especially this kid. Like, what the fuck is this problem? Like, bro, relax, okay? He ain't trying to take your boys, alright? I don't know, maybe the dude has a crush on him or something. I mean, he does give him that look. Yeah, but anyway. So the kid Jeff meets another kid named Drew that has a stepdad named Gus, who is a real son of a bitch. I mean, this guy is a fucking lunatic. I mean, right away, after being introduced to this guy, you can tell that power and ego motivate this motherfucker. And the fact that he has a badge too makes it that much more terrifying. So this is when the shit starts to hit the fan. Out of a menacing rage, Gus decides to shoot Drew's dog, Zowie. After that happens, Drew and Jeff decide to test the urban legend and bury his dog on the sacred ground of Pet Sematary. Of course, in horror movie fashion, the dog does return, looking like it came out of hell, and later on eventually attacks Gus for picking on Drew. I mean, say what you want about the dead dog, he is loyal as hell. So of course, after Zowie kills Gus, these two decide to bury Gus where else but Pet Sematary. And what returns is even more menacing than what was living. At first he seems bizarrely calm and collected, well, by psychopath standards. And not long after, he eventually starts killing people. Starting with the school bully, and he gets this motherfucker good too. I mean, this is brutal. Being the innocent kid that Drew is, witnesses the whole damn thing. And of course, Gus can't have that. So what does he do? He chases that little boy all the way home, terrorizes the shit out of him. He jumps out of a window and hops in the car with his mom. But you think Gus is gonna let that happen? Nah, man. Fucking chases right after them. Unfortunately, this is where we meet the end of Drew and his mom, because Gus does some crazy ass shit and forces him to slam on the grill of a semi truck hauling potatoes. It sucks because I guess you can say that it's unfortunate they couldn't dust themselves off and fry again. Get it? Because instead of try, it's fry because the potatoes.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Anyway, Gus convinces Jeff to dig up his own mom and bury her where else but Pet Sematary. Jeff's dad catches wind of this, finds Gus, they have a little scuffle, and eventually pops one in that crazy bastard. In the meantime, Jeff is heading home to wait on the arrival of his mom, when a house guest suddenly arrives. And as you guessed it, it is the school bully, of course. I mean, come on, he wouldn't miss this moment for the world. So they start to fight, and the mom sits back and just watches, laughing her ass off, watching her only son getting his ass kicked. Fortunately though, Jeff comes out victorious, and with the house on fire, leaves his mom behind in the burning house, where she belongs, of course. And in the end, Jeff and his dad hop in the van and get out of town.
What? No dip?
They Live tonight at 8 on Channel 11, New York's movie.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry, I just kind of blew past this. I mean, there's so much going on in this film, it would literally be a 20-minute video if I kind of dove into each and every crazy aspect of the film. I pretty much just wanted to give you a taste of what to expect if you decide to watch this movie. So, the story is nearly similar to the first. The family moves in, has a tragedy, something supernatural is involved, and then the effects seep over to the town, or in this case, the family themselves. I wish they'd explained the change in attitude of the dead when they're resurrected, because clearly, in the first one, the cat and the kid are straight up evil and they go for the kill, right? Well, here, Gus and the dog have some sort of compassion for the boys, like they're trying to be good, but they can't. Obviously, they become killers, but there was no need for the buildup if that's the case. It could have easily became a slasher with the sheriff being the villain. The bully and the mom in the end made the film a little too crowded for a conclusion. It's like they just thought, okay, you know, like, we need to do something epic at the end and just shove these characters in. It was unnecessary, it felt. My two questions are like, why did Gus bury the boy's body to begin with? You know, I mean, I understand why he killed him because he's a killer, but why bury him? Like, did he know that he was gonna get Jeff, so he had somebody else go after him? But then isn't that why the mom was there to like kill him? Like, I don't know, it didn't make sense to me. And speaking of his mom, why did Jeff want to resurrect her to begin with? I mean, I know it's obvious he's grieving, but looking at the result of what Gus became, why would he even consider it? Whatever, the point I'm making is this started off as one film and it ended up feeling like another in the end. But I guess the question is, did I like it? And well, the solid answer would be, hell yeah! The film was entertaining as hell. The story honestly doesn't mean shit when it comes to a movie that isn't meant to be taken serious. The practical effects and the makeup are pretty damn good, as well as the soundtrack. Clancy Brown steals the show as Gus. I mean, most people know him as Mr. Krabs, but I recognize him as Captain Hadley on Shawshank Redemption. He's wild on there too though. But wow, did his menace show here. From his stern demeanor to his psycho zombie alter ego, he really did a fantastic job at capturing the lunacy of a madman. Which brings me back to the whole slasher idea. It could have easily been a fucking slasher film if he was a sheriff in the beginning and they killed him and they buried him. He came back and he started killing motherfuckers in the town. That would have made more sense. But on a serious note, Pet Sematary 2 shows that the topic of death can be interpreted in different ways. Everyone has their own grieving process and view of the afterlife. Here we see both boys having to deal with a life that was close to them being taken away. As teens, we're not sure about many things in life, that including death. I guess you can say it's a story about the fragile nature of life. One moment can change in an instant, and other times a lack of compassion can cloud one's better judgment. Overall, I highly recommend Pet Sematary 2. I like that it sits on its own as a sequel without trying to be exactly like the first, like most part 2s in the industry. I also enjoyed the environment and the atmosphere of the quote-unquote creepy little town with a dark history. The whole cast really showed out and made the movie feel like you were watching their stress, their fear, and anxiety in real time. Of course, it has its questionable moments, but it doesn't distract you with pointless dialogue or unnecessary gore. In the end, I think I'd have to give it 4 out of 5 stars, and I highly recommend it for many of you out there who enjoy these type of movies. This film was a memory I had long forgotten for nearly decades, and after rewatching it, I see why it's one of my personal favorites, especially because of the nostalgic memory that comes along with it. And that's where I'll leave it. So thank y'all very much for watching, and have a great freaking night.
Oh.